mom, on the eve of my only daughter's wedding, she was standing behind me looking down. Wow, you scared me. What's the matter? What happened? There's something I haven't told you, Mom. My daughter slowly lifted her face. Seeing her expression, I swallowed hard. And then she tightly gripped the heavy object she was holding in her hand. I'm sorry, Mom. Wait a minute, what is that? Just a night that was supposed to be filled with happiness gradually got tainted with sorrow and hatred. My name is Anne. When I was 24, I married Davis, a senior colleague at my company, and we were blessed with a daughter, Molly. I quit my job when we got married to focus on raising our child, and Davis was a wonderful family man who worked hard to provide for us. Our home was so bright and happy that neighbors often mentioned how blissful we seemed. But our everyday life shattered suddenly. It happened not long after Melly turned 5. Suddenly, Davis didn't return home from work. Even when I contacted his office, no one knew the reason, and it seemed he had started taking unexplained absences from the next day. We consulted with the in-laws and neighbors, but no one had any information that could hint at where he might have gone. Every day, I scoured the newspapers and news broadcasts, wondering if he had gotten involved in an accident or incident, but I found no clues. The kind-hearted Davis had completely disappeared. Losing my husband so suddenly was devastating, but I couldn't cry forever. I resumed work to support Emily and found myself raising her single-handedly. Actually, even at her young age, Melly seemed to understand the situation and actively began helping with household chores like cooking and cleaning. By the time she graduated from elementary school, she was even preparing my lunch, a responsibility that should not have fallen on her shoulders, but her help was genuinely a lifesaver. She's such a wonderful daughter. I wish her father could see her, wherever he is. Often muttering such things, I found myself talking to Davis's photo more often than not. Life wasn't easy, but Melly and I leaned on each other, and she grew up quickly. In the blink of an eye, 20 years passed, and Melly, now 25, was getting married. But it was bittersweet to see her leave the nest, but seeing her happy face filled my heart with joy. I'm sorry. I wish your father could be here with you on your wedding day. Then Molly gently shook her head with a smile. I'm really happy just to have you here, Mom. Actually, could you tell me some stories about Dad tonight? I want to hear more about him from your perspective. And so, Molly and I found ourselves reminiscing about Davis. We pulled out a faded old album from the dresser, and as we flipped through the pages, we began to share the memories captured in each photo. This picture is from when you stood up for the first time. Your father was so moved. He was crying while taking this photo, Although as we spoke, the happy days seemed to come back as if it was just yesterday. There entered the memories of our family of 3, even though it was only for 5 years, came rushing back all at once. Finally, we reached the last page of the album. It contained photographs from my wedding with Davis. It was a group picture taken with friends, and it seemed like I could hear the joyous laughter from that time. Well, this is from your wedding, isn't it, Mom? You look so cute in your wedding dress. You'll be dressing up like this very soon, won't you? We'll make sure to take beautiful pictures, okay? Ali was initially enchanted by my photo, but her expression suddenly turned serious. Wait, hold on. Molly took the album and scrutinized a photo intensely, as if trying to dig into it. Her intense gaze surprised me a bit. What happened, you ask? Why are you staring at the wedding photo so intensely? Alila said, tilting her head pointing at one individual. That person was a woman doing a peace sign at the corner of the group photo. Hearing that, I involuntarily furrowed my brows for a moment. Her name was Betty, a friend invited by Davis and also his childhood friend. I'd only met her at the wedding, but her impression was so strong that I clearly remember her. Betty stood out, but not in a good way. She was excessively affectionate with my husband, touching his hand and leaning on his shoulder right in front of me, the bride.
Well, Davis, sir, you look so damn good in that suit. And I wish I was the one marrying you.
But in response to her openly saying such things in front of me, both I and the others around seemed quite taken aback. Yet amidst this, only Davis seemed to be enjoying it, smiling sheepishly. Hey, don't get all touchy-feely during the wedding, well yeah? Seriously, you've always been too close for comfort. Do that kind of stuff where no one can see you. It's embarrassing, isn't it? Watching the two of them, I felt a connection that transcended their childhood friendship. However, bringing it up during the wedding would only create an unpleasant atmosphere. So at that time, I swallowed all the things I wanted to say and kept forcing a smile. Asked by my daughter about Betty, the unpleasant memories from that time resurfaced, causing a feeling of unease deep within my chest. Moreover, you weren't even born at that time. I haven't met her at all since the wedding. You shouldn't know her. Despite what I said, my daughter seemed convinced of something. No, I'm sure. I've met her. I felt an eerie atmosphere and swallowed hard. Exactly? At home, next this house. She came over to visit several times. The shock left me breathless. I wanted to laugh it off, telling her to stop joking around, but my daughter's expression was utterly serious. I was left speechless, unable to find the words.
Mom, didn't Dad tell you about it?
Hear what? You can't be serious. Betty came to our house when... I remember it being around the time Dad disappeared. At least when you weren't at home, it's a distant memory, but I clearly remember this face. It says if what my daughter is saying is true, it would mean that my husband had invited Betty to our home. But furthermore, considering he didn't tell me anything, it was clear that it wasn't a wholesome invitation. Given Betty's behavior during the wedding, I could easily imagine this. I started to feel a suspicion I had never felt before, my breath becoming shallow. I wanted to leave the house and start investigating my husband right away, but tomorrow is my daughter's wedding. I held back my impatient feelings and gently closed the photo album. Let's put aside the matter about your fuck for now. Tomorrow is your big day after all. But Mom, this must be important for you, right? Maybe we should investigate more about Dad. The most important thing for me right now is to witness my only daughter's wedding. But once that's over, would you help me with this? At my words, my daughter nodded. The next day, my daughter's wedding went off splendidly. Comparing to the old times, I was most relieved not to see any malicious people like Betty around. I want her to be happy from now on. And I began to harbor unforgiving feelings towards Davis, who had troubled such a wonderful daughter since her childhood. I'd see as I had worried about being involved in some incident, but perhaps I had been betrayed instead. Just wanting to know the truth, I later visited a detective agency with my daughter to request an investigation into my husband. The results of the investigation confirmed the worst-case scenario. Davis was still living a happy life. Moreover, he was cohabiting with the Betty my daughter pointed out in the album, and they even had a child who was now in high school. I couldn't hide my anger at the fact that he had built a completely separate family. But above all, I couldn't forgive that he was still living with the child from his affair, putting aside our daughter. I wanted to confront my husband right away, but first I decided to move out of our house. It was the house that I had protected so that he wouldn't be homeless when he came back someday, but things had changed now. I had my daughter and her husband help me, and we decided to dispose of all Davis's belongings. I shipped my belongings to a rented room in a different location, rented a room in advance, leaving the house completely empty. Of course, I threw all the photographs of my husband into a garbage bag. I even tore the pictures from our wedding, the event that triggered the uncovering of his affair, from the album and crumpled them up before throwing them away. After losing everything, I stormed into the apartment where Betty and Davis were living. When I rang the doorbell, the man who had been missing for 20 years casually appeared. Operations, it was so easy to find the man I couldn't find no matter how hard I looked, that I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. It's been a long time, hasn't it? My daughter has grown up so much. The kids around here have grown quite a bit too, haven't they? And why are you here? 13 in a panic, I took my husband to a neighborhood restaurant and had Betty messaged to join us. E.T., who arrived late, was smiling cheekily and brazenly. Ordered a hamburger, despite having probably heard the situation from Davis beforehand. Well, if it isn't the pitiful abandoned wife. You look so tired. I recognized you right away, because you've always had that unimpressive face. Instead of showing any remorse, Betty draped her arm around Davis's, looking triumphant. Even Davis, who had been hesitant until now, seemed to feel more at ease, thinking he had gained the upper hand since Betty arrived. What do you want with me now? I've built a happy family here. You're not planning to make my family snuffer just because you've had a hard time, are you? Holding back tears was all I could manage upon hearing Davis's words. If you care so much about your current family, why did you abandon me and our daughter so easily? I raised my voice, and my husband's eyes widened in surprise. However, he quickly smirked and looked at Betty before responding. Because on our wedding day, I met Betty again and realized how cute she still was. It felt like fate, reuniting with such a cute childhood friend, you know? But for such a ridiculous reason. And since having a child, you gained weight, haven't you, Anne? Become so unsightly. In contrast, Betty remained cute. Switching to her was definitely the right decision. You've aged, and I couldn't bear living with someone like you. But no matter what I said, nothing would get through to this guy. So I proceeded to demand compensation for distress from both Davis and Betty. At this, Betty leaned forward with wide eyes. "Compensation," she exclaimed. "Hold on a minute. This is a hassle," she thought. "You mean to say Davis, who's been missing for 20 years, and you haven't even gone through the divorce procedures?"
As though.
I always thought he would come back someday, so I never removed him from my family register. I never thought it would come in handy this way, until upon hearing my words, Betty shook off Davis's arm and began shouting angrily. I went along with it, because Davis said if we say I went missing, they'll divorce us automatically and we won't be sued for compensation. "I'm the victim here," Betty stated.
The only one at fault is Davis, this liar. You're sobbing. Betty forcefully slapped my husband's cheek and stormed out of the restaurant.
Stammering and holding his cheek, my husband was at a loss. I don't believe so. I can't afford to pay compensation. I'm not working right now. I was living off support from Betty's wealthy parents. Now they'll kick me out. I can barely manage my life. How can I pay such a large sum?
He asked. "How convenient for you to say that now," Betty retorted. "You abandoned us, leaving a young child with me and non-working wife. You have no right to say that. You should take responsibility for the consequences of your actions." She added, "By the way, I've already let go of the house we lived in together. You'll need to find a new place to live." As I rose to leave, Davis grabbed my hand, tears welling up, pleading desperately. "Wait, Anne," he said. "Let's start over, shall we? Our daughter must want to see me, right? In the end, a family needs to be together. Apologize, so please forgive me." "Oh, you seem to be misunderstanding something, aren't you?" I shook off Davis's hand and looked down at him with cold eyes. "You're a stranger to me now," I said. "You abandoned us yourself 20 years ago, remember?" The waiter brought the hamburger to the crestfallen Davis. The crestfallen Davis was slumped over the table. Davis used to make hamburgers for my daughter and me quite often in the past. With that small memory as the last, we were finally able to end things completely. In the end, both Betty and Davis were sued for $30,000 each for compensation. Betty, who broke up with Davis, was disowned by her family for keeping the affair a secret, losing their financial support, and had to juggle multiple unfamiliar jobs. Having a high schooler is quite expensive, so she will likely have a hard time from now on. Davis got hired at a neighborhood supermarket, but he wasn't young anymore, and it was pitiful watching him carry heavy boxes and being yelled at by younger supervisors. Davis, who couldn't afford to pay the compensation, ended up in debt, facing an uncertain future, but that's none of my concern. As for me, although I had prepared to live alone, my daughter's husband suggested that I move in with him. He must have heard about my struggles from my daughter. He insisted that he really wanted me to live with them, and I decided to take up his kind offer. As for me, who'd been very busy lately, his kindness was truly a blessing. Now I'm living happily with my daughter and my son-in-law. Having lived alone for so long, these days have been bustling and happy for me. Moreover, it's settled that our family will be growing in the near future. In my daughter's womb, a new life was forming. Like once this little one arrives, we plan to go take a family picture. All the family photos I had until now, I threw away when I left home. I plan to forget the harsh memories of the past and start adorning a new album with this picture, marking the beginning of many joyful memories to come. Hurried to the hospital, there were several missed calls on the phone my husband had forgotten, so reluctantly I answered. A woman's voice suddenly said that. I was lost for words and remained silent. Shortly after, my husband returned home to get the phone. When our eyes met, his face changed color and he froze. Seeing his reaction, I was convinced that he had fathered a child with his mistress. And then I silently handed him the phone that was still connected. My name is Betty Johnson. I'm a 28-year-old office worker. My husband Maurice, who is 2 years older than me, works at a bank. Though his career is going well, we had a concern. That is, despite being married for nearly 3 years, we hadn't been able to have children yet. Because being a dual-income couple, there was limited time to spend together, and it seemed common to have difficulties conceiving. Given our ages, I was starting to feel the pressure. So we decided to have a conversation about trying to conceive. I've been thinking about wanting to have kids soon. What about you, Maurice? Yeah, I guess. I'm getting older too, and I do want children. I'm considering consulting at a gynecologist's office. I really want to plan out our efforts to conceive properly. Well, I don't think we need to rush it just yet. I still cherish our time together, just the two of us. I know I'm not rushing, but there's the matter of age on the woman's side. You're right about that. We should be prepared for you to get pregnant at any time. Maurice shared that he felt there was no need to rush the pregnancy, but he wanted to have a stable living environment ready for when we do have a child. As we were living in Maurice's company-provided housing, but it was far from my workplace, making the commute inconvenient. Moreover, it was a 4-story building with no elevator, so we, residing on the 3rd floor, had to use the stairs. So, if I were to get pregnant, the commute would become considerably inconvenient, and using the stairs with a baby post-delivery might be quite a challenge. Maurice worried about this and was thinking about moving before I got pregnant. After fearing Maurice's foresight, I agreed to search for a home in a more child-friendly environment. Fortunately, my parents, who manage apartments, recommended a property near a convenient station for my commute. We visited the place and were completely taken with it. This is a nice place. It's near the station, which would make your commute much easier, Betty. Is that all right? It comes with a parking spot, so it might actually be more convenient. To facilitate the purchase of the apartment, my parents agreed to front the money, and we would make monthly payments to buy it from them, reducing our financial burden. Moving into the new apartment, which had an elevator and was within walking distance to the station and supermarket, we found ourselves satisfied with our comfortable life. As we got used to our life in the new place, I decided to undergo tests at the gynecologist's office as a part of our efforts to conceive, and discussed this with Maurice. He wasn't too keen on the idea, but sensing that men might be hesitant at first, I decided to patiently wait for him to agree. You know, by testing, I don't mean starting infertility treatments right away. We're just getting checked to see if there are any issues making it difficult to conceive.
I understand, but I feel it's a bit early.
Maybe we can consider it a little later. I mentioned before, there's the age factor for women. If we keep postponing it, it might become even more difficult to conceive. But what about your job? You enjoy the fulfilling work you're doing, right?
That's not a problem.
My workplace is understanding of such situations and would excuse me from things like business trips during this time.
Alright, give me a little more time to think about it, okay?
Yes, of course. Take your time to think about it. I didn't intend to rush Maurice, but it seemed that he felt pressured nonetheless, and he started coming home late more frequently, citing work meetings and socializing with colleagues as reasons. Naturally, the time we spent together as a couple decreased, and I felt down, thinking that moving to the new apartment for the sake of starting a family seemed meaningless now. However, after a while, Maurice suddenly agreed to undergo testing at the gynecologist's office. He said, "I'll get tested too." Well, I am confident that I am healthy, but if it gives you peace of mind, it's fine. What changed your mind all of a sudden? What's with the attitude? I finally agreed to join you in this, and you're acting like this. I am cooperating with your efforts to conceive. Aren't you happy? Of course I am happy. Thank you for cooperating. Although his somewhat patronizing attitude bothered me, I decided to go ahead and book the testing appointment at the gynecologist's office, appreciating that Maurice was finally on board. The following month, after completing the tests at the gynecologist's office, we were awaiting our next appointment to discuss the results. These are contrary to my nervousness about the outcome. Maurice seemed quite confident and even attempted to comfort me during the wait. Well, don't get down no matter what the outcome is. Just accept it as fate. Don't say things like that. It just makes me worry even more. I wondered where my husband's confidence, who believed there were no infertility issues on his end, was coming from. Up to a few days later, despite it being a weekend, my husband had to hastily prepare to go to work due to a call from his boss. I asked him, "Is there such a thing as working on weekends at the bank?" He replied, "The loan officer is holding a home loan seminar, but it seems they are short-staffed. It's an important job for the bank, you know." Saying so, he quickly finished his shower and hurriedly left. A few minutes after seeing him off, I heard his phone ringing from the bathroom. He has a habit of keeping his smartphone within reach, even when he is showering, so it seems he forgot it there. I picked up his phone and saw the caller ID. The display name was Stella Trading Company. It seemed work-related, but I hesitated to answer on his behalf. As I was contemplating, the call ended. However, because it kept ringing repeatedly, I thought it might be important and decided to apologize for my husband who had forgotten his phone and answered the call. Before I could say hello, the person on the other end started talking.
"I gave birth. I come to the hospital quickly."
But caught off guard by the sudden voice of a woman from the other end. I was lost for words.
Seen me with his phone. His face changed color and he froze.
At that moment, when our eyes met, I understood everything. This person from Stella Trading Company must be my husband's mistress, and she was reporting the birth of their child.
The woman continued to say, I worked hard to give birth to your child. You must be happy.
Please give me a lot of rewards. Huntley handed the smartphone to my frozen husband. Just with trembling hands, he took it and started talking in a strained voice. Hello. Regarding that matter? Hey, it's me. Stella. Yes. Is someone there with you? Don't tell me your wife is there. Since I gave birth to the baby, you should divorce her now. You said you don't need a defective wife, didn't you? No, well, my husband seemed to be quite flustered, forgetting to turn off the speaker on his phone, and continued to talk to the woman named Stella while sweating profusely. But come to the hospital quickly. You have to take care of me from now on, and quickly discard your defective wife. After ending the call with his mistress, my husband stood there, head bowed, holding the phone. I said to my husband, is the call from your important person over? You should go to her. There's a valid reason for this. You'll understand if I explain. What do you want to make me understand? That you made a child with your mistress? I already know. That's because you're the reason too. It's not just my fault. I'm the reason. What do you mean? Because you're infertile and yet you desire a child. That's why I had a child with someone else. I don't want to hear such ridiculous excuses now. Just leave this place quickly. And don't ever come back, okay? What? This is my house. But don't say whatever you want. I couldn't stand to talk with him anymore, so I left the room. I couldn't stand to talk with my self-centered husband anymore and returned to my room. Soon, I heard the sound of my husband leaving, and afterwards I was left alone, crying until my eyes swelled up. The next day, I had the day off from work, but I couldn't muster the strength to get up in the morning, feeling lethargic and weighed down. My husband, in the end, didn't come home that night, and couldn't help but think he must be spending time with his mistress and their child, and tears started to well up again. At that moment, the ringtone of the phone echoed loudly. Somehow managing to open my heavy eyelids, I picked up the call. It was from the OB/GYN where I had undergone fertility testing. Oh yes, I remembered that today was the day to hear the results of the test. I informed them I would be a bit late and headed out. At this point, it seemed like our fertility tests as a couple didn't matter anymore, but I reluctantly went to the appointment to avoid missing it entirely. However, the results of the test were something unthinkable, and I ended up returning home, my mind swirling in confusion. That day, I contacted my parents, explained the situation, and asked for their help. I decided to move out of this condo unit by the end of the day. I couldn't stand to stay in a house where I had lived with a husband who called me defective, not even for a moment longer. As with my parents' connections, I arranged for movers and junk removal services. After moving out all the belongings, I took a last look at the empty room and murmured to myself, this is just the beginning. I will show him. The next day, I received an angry call from my husband. Because the house was locked and there was a for sale sign posted, he said, "Hey, what's going on here?" I replied, "I've disposed of that place." "You don't have a home to return to anymore?" "What do you mean disposed of?" he asked. "That's my house too," he protested. "This is not acceptable," he said. "Acceptable, you say? I would like to return those words to you exactly as they are," I replied. When I informed him that I had forwarded his belongings to his parents' house cash on delivery, he seemed at a loss for words. "Since his parents live in the same city," I explained, "I decided to stay at a nearby business hotel while commuting to work and figuring out the next steps." Later, the divorce negotiations began. Thus, under the supervision of our respective lawyers, my husband and I engaged in discussions. My husband insisted that my infertility was the reason for his affair, asserting that I was uncooperative even though he wanted children. He said this had led to the breakdown of our marriage, and that he had an affair. Actually, now that he had a child with his mistress, he asked me to step aside for the sake of the child. I explained that I was not aware of any marital breakdown and, in fact, was actively engaged in trying to conceive. I asserted that it was my husband who had betrayed me. His lawyer pointed out that I was blaming my husband while ignoring my infertility and that I had wrongfully disposed of the house where the woman and her newborn would return. At that point, I revealed the results of the tests from the OB-GYN as evidence of our efforts to conceive. The results showed that there was nothing wrong with me, but there were issues with my husband's reproductive abilities. Seeing this, my husband was astonished. "No, that's a lie. Because I have a child with Stella, it must be my wife who's infertile, right? It seems you were eager for the test because your mistress got pregnant, right? Well, it worked out, didn't it? You ended up having a child." "No way. Stella, that woman, couldn't have." My husband apparently was confident in the results, presuming that I was the one who was infertile since he had conceived a child with his mistress. However, upon seeing the actual test results, he began to doubt whether the child with his mistress was really his. At this point, his lawyer asked him for an explanation, saying the story was different, and my husband was caught off guard, appearing flustered. Moreover, concerning the condo, I explained that it's registered under my parents' names. Therefore, there's no illegality in disposing of it, and presented the land registry. It seems that my husband had lied about owning the house, and his lawyer wanted to go back to square one, postponing the discussions. My attorney informed me that it was not necessary for us to sit down for negotiations anymore, and asked me to leave it up to them. I agreed to do so. Later, the divorce was finalized, and I made my ex-husband pay me a lump sum of $40,000 as compensation and $20,000 to the other woman. According to my lawyer, my ex-husband initially moved back to his parents' home and then back to the company housing, where the mistress turned up with a baby. She used to work as a temporary staff member at my husband's bank, and that's where they started their affair. My ex-husband doubted if the child was his and attempted to check the child's blood type, but the mistress threw a tantrum and refused, forcing him to acknowledge the child ambiguously. Furthermore, the corporate housing was disturbed by the late-night arguments and shouting matches between my ex and the mistress. This reached the ears of the higher-ups at the bank, his workplace, and when called in for clarification, the reasons for the divorce and the extramarital child were revealed. ex in the conservative banking circle, it seems my ex's prospects of promotion have become dismal, and he spends his days doing simple tasks near the window. The mistress, on the other hand, has been causing troubles one after another, forcing childcare onto other wives in the company housing and borrowing money, causing such a ruckus that she's been sued, and even approached my lawyer for consultation. I haven't had a chance to hear further updates from my lawyer, but it seems like they are facing the consequences of their actions. As for me, I reported my divorce at work and was in the process of looking for a rental apartment suitable for a single person when I was asked to consider a position abroad. In fact, they had wanted to offer me a position abroad for a while. But I held back, knowing I was trying to conceive. I accepted the offer without hesitation, ready to take on a new challenge. Although my marriage ended unhappily, my life still continues. I decided not to be discouraged and to keep moving forward. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment. Honestly, I prefer Mally over Carol. I wish she'd just leave the house already. Tom and Julia had been ignoring me for about 10 years. I had a feeling, and it seemed Tom was having an affair. That morning, I couldn't shake off their conversation, feeling frustrated while working. But whether he's seeing someone or not, this is the only home I have to return to. This was Kakshan, and I finished work and tried to unlock the door. My key wouldn't fit. No matter how many times I tried, it wouldn't insert. When I rang the doorbell, there was no sign of anyone coming. Had they locked me out, deeming me unnecessary in the house? The moment I realized that, my anger hit its peak. I'll make them pay, both Tom and Julia and that other woman. Determined, I left the house. My name is Carol Brown. I'm 47 years old. I work in sales and lead a busy life. At 40, I had never really been in a serious relationship. Though I dated a few men, none worked out. I started to believe that I might never get married. Once that thought settled in, I dived deeper into my work year after year, resulting in me becoming a person who only worked, unable to find love or get married. The only consolation was the trust one earned at the company where I'd been since my early career days. But then, one day, a turning point came. It was when I met Tom. He was the representative from a new client, 2 years my senior. I'm Tom Parker. Nice to meet you. My first impression was that he was a very refreshing gentleman. We worked together a few times, and he was so diligent and passionate about his job. I had never met such an impressive man before. Before, though I had given up on romance, I found myself becoming attracted to him. To my delight, it seemed he felt the same way. And what started as business drinks led to more personal outings, and soon we were dating. But when Tom confessed his feelings, I want to date you with marriage in mind, he said, I never expected to have a boyfriend at this age, let alone someone wanting to marry me. Tilted, I immediately accepted, and we began our relationship. But Tom had some secrets. Firstly, he had divorced just a few months earlier, and he had a 6-year-old daughter. Honestly, I was quite shocked. He didn't share why they divorced, but I assumed since he had custody, his ex-wife must have done something. Yet hearing this didn't change how I felt about him. I was prepared to raise his daughter if he was fine with it. My feelings for him only grew stronger. His daughter's name, apparently, is Julia. After hearing from Tom, I made an effort to spend time with Julia, arranging opportunities to hang out at the park or go shopping together. And then, about a year after I started dating Tom, we got married. First, we didn't have a wedding ceremony. We just filed the marriage certificate. Still, it was good. I never realized how happy it could be to marry someone you love. However, various worries did cross my mind. I wondered if I'd get along with Tom and Julia, who had always been family. As would Julia, as she grew, accept me. Also, I couldn't quit my job after getting married. I was concerned if I'd have enough time with Julia. So on my days off, I tried my best to spend time bonding with my family. Perhaps because of that effort, Julia grew incredibly close to me, and our relationship became just like a real mother and daughter. However, this harmony didn't last forever. The things started to change when she entered her teens. Now in middle school, she began to lash out at me. It started with a comment from Julia. "Carol, you seem older than the other moms, don't you think?" She said, remembering the other day during parent-teacher conference day. Sure enough, there had been a parent-teacher conference recently. I couldn't attend because of work, but from what Julia said, many parents must have been there. Is that so? It's embarrassing to have Carol as my mom. He must have been holding back his feelings towards me for a long time. After talking to Julia, I figured he couldn't contain his feelings anymore. But, Carol, how about losing some weight? It's not a good look for you. Not a good look. Dad's right, I told you before. It's embarrassing having Carol as a mom. How can you? Why do they have to say such things to me? I've poured all my time and love into this family. I realized none of my feelings got through to them, and it felt suffocating. You don't have to say that. What does it bother you? She was laughing hysterically, and Tom didn't stop her. He joined in on the laughter. It became too painful to stay there, so I escaped to the kitchen. Carol, get dinner ready now. If it's as bad as usual, you won't hear the end of it. Despite my exhaustion from work, I started preparing dinner. Neither Tom nor Julia offered any help. They sure had a lot to say, though. While I was doing chores, even on weekends, the two of them watched TV and filled the room with their laughter. If you're just watching TV, can you wash the dishes? Why? Why should we? We can do it. So we're busy watching TV. As always, neither of them listened to my request. How long will they keep putting me down? Wasn't marriage supposed to be more joyful than this? And to think I finally found happiness in my 40s. But their torment didn't stop there. My life took a turn for the worse one day. That day was our wedding anniversary. I've always cherished our anniversaries, so that day I prepared an extravagant meal. Grilled turkey appetizers and a cake for dessert. It was like a Christmas or New Year's feast. I didn't cook everything, but seeing the food spread out, Tom and Julia were ecstatic. Maybe I felt this moment was heartwarming because I still had affection for them. Still, I had affection for them. This is delicious. Tastes great. Oh, here, this piece of meat is for you. Oh, thanks. Touching them, I couldn't help but smile. But that joy was short-lived. Then, for some reason, from the next day, they began to ignore me. They ignored every question I asked, every comment I made. Watching the two of them chat and laugh without me broke my heart. But I held on to the hope that they'd eventually talk to me like before. However, that hope was crushed. The ignoring started when Julia was 15. Before I knew it, she turned 25. It had been 10 years. They still continued to ignore me. When they wanted something, they'd just bluntly shout out nouns like foods or a bath. Except I looked their way, they'd be leisurely sipping beers in coolers, having a good time. At first, I'd protest, saying, "You can't just talk to me like that." "I'm tired too, you know. Can't you do something on your own for once?" I used to say such things, but after 10 years, I didn't even feel like saying them anymore. All I did was listen to what the two of them said and acted accordingly. I felt just like a robot. Of course, I thought about divorce many times, but I couldn't take that step. I wanted someone to push me, but there was no one. I spent my days in turmoil all by myself. You know what? That's hilarious. The two of them are still making noise in the living room as usual. At first, it was annoying, but after being ignored for 10 years, I just didn't care anymore. Is this my life forever? That's when something happened that really shook me. It was when I was going back to the living room from my room. I overheard their conversation from a slightly open door. "Hey, Dad, what's going on with Mally these days? Maylee, who's Maylee?" "Well, why are you blushing?"
I don't know who Mally is. Why do you ask?
Hearing an unfamiliar woman's name startled me.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm not seeing anyone else.
Then Tom said something shocking. Honestly, I prefer Maylee over Carol. Alrighty, so that's it. It confirmed my suspicions. Tom was cheating. I had a feeling for a while. He suddenly started caring about his appearance, using cologne and hair duo. When I found cosmetics in his suit pocket, I felt devastated. His accessible curses. I knew about it, but hearing about the other woman from Tom made it hurt so much. That day, their conversation haunted me. I didn't feel like going home, so I stayed late at work. Even though I knew he was cheating, I had nowhere else to go. At teen, when I got home and searched my bag for the key, I wondered how late I'd be up doing chores. It seemed like it would be past midnight. I tried to insert the key I found into the lock, but... what? It didn't fit. I tried many times, but it just wouldn't work. Oh no! Did they change the locks while I was at work? I kept ringing the doorbell, but nobody came out. The lights were on, so I knew someone was home. Neither Tom nor Juliet responded to my calls. Was it not enough for them to just ignore me? Now they physically locked me out. I began to understand, and instead of sadness, anger welled up inside. After all I've done, why do they treat me like this? If they want me to leave, I'll gladly do so. Giving up on getting inside, I returned to my car and turned off my personal cell phone. Fortunately, I had all the tools I needed for work. I also had a work phone, so I wasn't worried. They'll regret this. As a week later, I was living in a nearby hotel. I ate convenience stores and restaurants and only went back to the hotel to sleep. I never thought I could live such a comfortable life. Moreover, I was able to focus on my work more and felt that my performance improved. This must be because I left the house. Maybe it's time to go and check on things. At that thought, I turned on my personal cell phone. But to my surprise, there were more missed calls and emails than I had ever seen. Most of them read, "Come home now or help clean up." I started the car engine and headed home. Upon arrival, I rang the doorbell.
Hey, why did you come back until now? Hurry up and help clean.
"Yeah, come in quickly." The two grabbed my hands and pulled me inside. What greeted me inside was a mess. Takeout containers scattered everywhere, empty beer cans, and trash bags. I knew it wasn't clean, but I never imagined it would be this bad. "What's this? Julia didn't clean up. That's why it's so messy." "Excuse me? I've been working too, you know. You could have helped." It's they used to get along so well, but their relationship seemed to have soured in just a week. Well, it's none of my business. I've lost my affection for them both. Whatever. You clean it up. You came back to help clean, didn't you? Not at all. I just came to get some of my things. At that, I quickly packed my checkbook, personal seal, and some cosmetics into my bag. "Carol, are you mad? Changing the locks without telling us." "It was just a joke. Come on, come back to us." They both pleaded desperately, but there was no need for me to listen anymore. Silently, I packed all of my belongings into my bag. "Hey, don't ignore us." "Right, we're asking you, begging you." "That's and cruel to ignore us." "Cruel to ignore? Who's been ignoring me all this time?" At my words, both looked away uncomfortably. "Make sure it's clean by the next time I come." With that, I left the house. I had discreetly left the filled-out divorce papers in the bedroom. I wonder if they'll notice. After that, I stopped living in hotels and settled in a cheap monthly rental apartment. Though it was mostly just a place to sleep. Having my own space made me happy, and I looked forward to coming home every day. After I took my stuff, the two stopped contacting me. But the thing that kept bugging me was the divorce papers. If they had noticed the papers, they would have surely reacted. I wasn't in the mood to reach out, and 3 months passed by. Then I got a call from Tom after a long time.
Gee, Gerald.
What the hell?
What do you mean, what?
Some lawyer just showed up telling us to vacate the house because you're selling the land. Oh, I see. While waiting for Tom's reaction, I had consulted with a real estate agent about demolishing the house I used to live in. The reason is simple. I won't live there anymore. First off, that house is in my name. You think you can just sell it? That house is in my name, remember? We changed it when I got promoted. Did he forget something that important? I'm speechless. Oh, right. And those divorce papers? What's the deal? I'm not divorcing you. I threw them away. Got it. Now stop selling the house and come back. Tom then hung up abruptly. I see. The divorce papers got thrown away, huh? If only you'd filled them out, we could have divorced quietly. After hearing Tom's side of the story, I took further action. I'll definitely squeeze alimony out of Tom. I've endured for over 10 years. I'm determined to make him pay. With that resolve, I made a call to a certain place. If you think changing the locks behind my back is a joke, I'd expect you to treat my selling the house as a joke too. Ever since the decision to sell the house, Tom and Julia fought even more. checking my personal cell, there's almost always a message from Julia. Contents is I don't want to live with Dad anymore. Like that. She also mentioned their fights and Tom not cleaning up. He complains about both cleaning and cooking, and she's getting fed up. But I never responded to those messages. I'm not attached to them. Frankly, I couldn't care less about what happens to Julia. 2 months later, I was at a law firm. Next to me sat a lawyer. Just across from me were Tom and Julia. So, do you know why you're here? Why we're here. He seemed pretty intimidated by the formal office atmosphere. Julia was sitting in her chair, looking like she didn't have anything to do with it. What's the deal? Calling us here? It's because of you, Carol, that we've been busy moving and cleaning. I just wanted a break. Seeing her audacity, I realized they had no clue how badly they messed up. I think that I was stunned and couldn't say anything. The house got demolished quickly and the land's been cleared. Everything's going according to my plan. However, there's still one unresolved issue. Today, we have to settle it. What do you want? We have to settle it. What do you want? Hearing Tom's hesitant question, the lawyer calmly stated our business. We called you here today to discuss the divorce. Divorce? Yes, I already told you I wanted a divorce. I had no idea. Didn't you throw away the divorce papers I left behind? When I filled them out, it meant I wanted a divorce. Tom, recalling the situation, didn't say anything more. But if you wanted a divorce, why not talk it out without getting a lawyer involved? If I just wanted a divorce, I would have done that. Yes, I had another motive besides divorce. But to achieve that, I needed a lawyer. The moment I mentioned his mistress, both Tom and Julia's eyes widened in shock. No way. That's right. Then, can you still say that after seeing this? I pulled out several photos and documents from an envelope and placed them in front of them. What's this? I hired a private investigator to look into you. Impressive, right? Pictures of you entering a hotel, getting cozy, and even going into her apartment. You're mistaken. Mistaken? Going into a hotel together is enough evidence of an affair, Julia. You knew about it, right? You two seemed pretty chummy, talking about Melly. What? How do you see her flustered? I slammed more photos onto the table. With this, there's no way out. I'm going to ask Tom for a divorce and alimony. After being presented with all this evidence, there's no escaping it, right? Or do you have something else you want to say? I was so irritated by their attitudes that I made a slightly provocative comment. However, neither of them lashed out at me. This is all Dad's fault. Why did it come to this? I don't even understand the whole alimony thing. You were cheering for me and Melly too, weren't you? What the heck are you saying now? The childish squabbling of the two right before my eyes left me speechless. Later on, the attorney moved the conversation along, and Tom and I were finally divorced. I was satisfied since I was able to demand the alimony amount I had hoped for from Tom. Moreover, since we had identified both Melly's residence and workplace, I requested alimony from her at the same time. At first, Melly seemed quite resistant, but in the end, she apparently agreed to pay without much fuss. It seems that Tom and Melly ended up breaking up after all this. and Tom and Julia constantly quarreled, so they're now living separately. The reason I know all this is because Julia constantly updates me. Carol, I can't live on my own. Please, let's live together. And truly sorry, unlike Dad. So please. She kept insisting that she was repentant, but how could I believe her? I ignored all her messages. Eventually, it seemed she gave up as she stopped reaching out entirely. As for me, I moved out of my monthly rental apartment and purchased a unit in a brand new building. For a beautiful room with all my favorite furnishings. It's like a dream space. Tonight, I dove into my soft bed, preparing to sleep. Being able to have time just for myself, how blissful is that? I decided I'd make up for lost time and enjoy my single life to the fullest. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment. I've got an email from Dad. I don't get it, how are babies made? I was left dumbstruck by my daughter's unexpected, shocking statement. With a tilt of her head, she turned the screen towards me. What is this? What I saw was a scandalous message saying, I want to make a baby with you. Wedding in our usual hotel, followed by a room number. And what is he doing behind our backs? Seeing the determined look on my innocent daughter's face, I frantically searched my husband's room while he was out. But from something there, countless unbelievable evidences popped out. While I was desperately going through them, I came back to my senses when I heard a voice saying, Mom, I can't believe it. I can't forgive him. Not while our child is here. The next moment, I hastily called for help and initiated a brave plan. All for protecting my daughter and to bring my husband down. I'm Alma, 39 years old. I've been married for 11 years to a husband of the same age. Our daughter is in 4th grade this year. Life has been fulfilling since Anne was born. Children grow up so fast. However, disagreements arose with my husband over our daughter's education. It's the perfect season for reading. Let's go this weekend then. Yes. My daughter loves to study, especially recently she is into reading books. Seeing her take interest in learning is the greatest joy as a parent. However, my husband, who is playing with his smartphone nearby, interrupted our conversation. Writing paper books is so outdated. There are e-books, right? Anyway, in this age, all troublesome calculations and extensive knowledge are taken care of by AI. So if you have time to read books, why not learn programming instead? I'm Trey Gerst. As an introduction to digital devices, I'll buy you a smartphone. Is that so? My innocent daughter seemed to be taking my husband's words at face value. No, that's not right. Indeed, the role of education has changed with the advancement of computers, but what is really needed isn't just the superficial skill to operate them. Thinking skills to decide what to delegate to computers, judgment to scrutinize the results computers give, and the expressive power to proactively utilize them for society. Even the Department of Education says so. Then my husband abruptly slammed the table. Sir, don't be pretentious and use difficult words. And because you are too cerebral, you can't accept the changes of the times. Listen, you are wrong. I am right. Ignoring my opinions, He left the room with a click of his tongue. It's difficult. I don't understand. I comfort my saddened daughter, muttering so. It's all right. Read books, learn about the world, and you can pave your own way. So we're going to the library, right? Absolutely. Zay. The next day, my husband, who returned late at night, really bought a smartphone for our daughter. It's the latest model, setup is done, and our contacts are added. Ugh. I was at a loss for words. Just as the latest model surely costs around $600. Where'd you get that money? I muttered, and my husband responded. Huh. Obviously from the education fund account. That's it. It's the account where we have been saving money every month for our daughter's future. How could he just use the money from such an important account? Why would you do such a thing? I raised my voice unintentionally. It's not arbitrary. It's the result of proper consultation with AU. This is ridiculous. Look, you're the one who's outdated and ridiculous. Myber said to Furious, I say. Once again, he left the living room with a click of his tongue. Recently, my husband has stopped listening to my opinions. Moreover, our casual conversation times have significantly decreased, and he is always absorbed in his smartphone or computer. Using digital devices. Is this my selfishness? However, there is nothing I can do about the smartphone he bought. It seems a bit early for her age, but I can't deny its convenience, so I decided to hand the smartphone to my daughter. Teaching proper use is essential. Perhaps it's because I didn't oppose my husband and gave the smartphone to our daughter that he seems to be in a better mood since then. He stopped speaking harshly to me and the clicking of the tongue also ceased. But now I understand it wasn't because he started seeing us more favorably. Rather, the opposite. He had completely lost interest in us. Ironically, I realized this fact thanks to the smartphone he bought for our daughter. Besides, the weekend arrived, and I was preparing to go to the library with my daughter as promised. Are you coming too? I asked my husband, who'd unusually woken up and showered, even though it was his day off. I am going to a more futuristic place, he replied. I see. I thought to myself, here we go again. I'm tired of my husband's boastful, condescending talks. Oh, to prevent any further discussions, I kept quiet. Let's go. Yes, have fun. My daughter and I left, getting a rather uninterested send-off from him. Eventually, I remembered at the entrance of the library. Right, and did you put your phone on silent? My daughter pulled out her phone in response to my reminder. I forgot. Oh, there's a message from Dad. I wonder what it is. Did we forget something? I asked, but my daughter didn't understand. I don't get it. How are babies made? I was dumbfounded by my daughter's shocking words again. She tilted her head and turned the screen toward me. Mom, what does this mean? She asked. What is this? Again, the message was scandalous. I want to make a baby with you. It read. In my wide-open eyes, my daughter, probably sensing something unusual, asked in a fluster, Did I forget something? Do I need to make something? I desperately dodged the question. Well, remember Dad was talking about programming the other day. Maybe he's making some program. great numbers. Maybe he wants to teach you? Really? Then let's go to the hotel. Which one is the usual? Well, that one. Maybe he meant homes? Maybe he's talking in code for a program. I see. Even to me, my excuse sounded too forced, and my daughter seemed confused. Anyway, let's go home first. Ed might be there. Okay, I understand. And we hurried back the way we came. Of course, my husband wouldn't be home. The real intention isn't to meet my husband or anything like that. I'm ready to bring my husband down to hell. Being my daughter trying her best to keep up with my fast pace, I clenched my fists tightly. Once home, I went straight to my husband's room. Ed's not here. That's right. And you must be tired from walking fast. Why don't you rest in the living room? Okay. While my daughter was resting, I desperately searched around the room. The lock. The computer was locked. I couldn't open it. Thing, power judgment, expression. I told myself as I looked around. What's this? I found an unfamiliar book in the corner of the desk. He said he doesn't read paper books. I was drawn into picking up the book. What is this? Multiple unbelievable evidences were scattered. While frantically looking through it, I came to my senses when I heard, "Mom, are we still going to the library?" Yes, I just remembered an errand. Can you go to the library with Grandma? Really? Okay. At the words blurted out in a flash, but it might surprisingly be the best move in this situation. I contacted my mother-in-law, who lives nearby, and had her pick up my daughter. I'm ready, and let's go to the library together. Okay. Is Grandpa coming too? At my daughter's words, I peered through the gap in the door, and there was my father-in-law. No, I have some business with your mom. He said that and nodded slightly as our eyes met. Probably my mother-in-law had explained the situation briefly, so he must have come out of worry. After seeing them off, my father-in-law immediately spoke up. What is that about Felix cheating? I'm sorry for the concern. Here, I flipped through the book in question. What is this? Hotel discount coupons and cash were tucked in. Moreover, the discount coupons were titled a members-only points card. This is indeed indicative of the usual hotel for secret meetings. It's not just this. I took out a piece of note tucked in another page and typed the string of characters into the computer. Listen from my important father-in-law, staring at the now open computer, said with a furious face, "All right, let's go now." Hey, go where? He silently pointed to the discount coupon. You can't be serious. Yeah, I can't sit by and do nothing. Let's go and drop him to hell. Oh, okay. Tano, I never would have thought of storming the hotel. Having my father-in-law there was reassuring. We quickly left the house. A few minutes later, we arrived in front of the mentioned hotel, but there were no signs of people. We both stood in awkward silence. In the heat of the moment, we came, but without knowing the room number. I recalled from memory 2133. It's 203. It was written in the misdirected email to Anne, all right? After arriving in front of the room, my father-in-law pressed the bell without hesitation. Presumably very impatient, a flurry of footsteps approached rapidly. I've been waiting. Hey, you're Clue. Why are you here? Those were the first words from my husband. He was at a loss for words from the surprise. You sent an email inviting us to this place, didn't you? I came in place of Anne. As at my words, it seemed my husband realized he'd sent the message to the wrong person. He instantly went pale and hung his head. You explain why you are here. Why is my father-in-law here with my wife in a hotel? We both gaped at my husband's sudden outburst. Since when? Explain. What are you talking about? You are having an affair with my father. At this remark, my father-in-law held his head in his hands. And you, losing his momentum, my father-in-law stopped speaking, so I spoke up. You know, we came here to bring you down to hell for your stupidity. Explain yourself now. Still, my husband tried to wriggle out. You know, since I woke up early on my day off, I thought I'd take another nap. The bed here is wider than at home. What? PFT. My father-in-law was furious, his face red. I found it amusing and couldn't help but laugh. What's with that excuse? Then what is this? I threw the book found in my husband's room at him. The book my husband failed to catch fell to the floor with a thud, revealing discount coupons and money from within. I brought it since you forgot it. My husband was silent for a while, seemingly concocting an excuse, then began to utter unbelievable words. So what? What's the big deal? What? My superior genes should be passed on as much as possible, right? It will prolong our lineage, and I'm contributing to America's future. What? I couldn't respond to my husband's absurdly tangential excuse. The next moment, dull sounds and screams echoed throughout the room. Ouch. Do you realize what you are saying? If you truly believe what you're saying, then your genes should be cut off right now. When did you lose your humanity? Why is this happening? I had hidden everything perfectly. I did everything the AI told me to do. Yes, I had seen all the history. He consulted a service where AI responds in human-like text about every move, such as where to hide evidence of infidelity and how to behave around me and our daughter to avoid suspicion. That's why I told you, becoming dependent on AI and losing the ability to think for yourself is dangerous. Lacking human emotions but retaining human desires is the degradation of a human dominated by AI. Acting anyway, you were already over as a human the moment you thought of having an affair. You deserve to be abandoned and die alone. Then my husband pleaded with tears in his eyes.
Please forgive me.
It's too late for apologies now. Besides, you seem to be apologizing for your own sake. Did you think about Anne at all today? Well, I can't let you see her anymore. Goodbye.
No, Dan. Deb, please say something for me.
Think something? Well, I'm done with you too. That's it.
Go away.
We left the room, leaving my sobbing husband behind. Later, we officially divorced. I hired a lawyer and demanded $16,000 in damages and child support until our daughter became an adult from my ex-husband. I contacted his mistress and demanded $8,000 in damages. I've been receiving countless apology emails from my ex-husband since then. Given that he hasn't called, those apologies are probably crafted by some AI. I had no intention to open such insincere emails, so I sent them all to the trash. His parents supported me to the fullest during the divorce. They found a new house near us to prevent our daughter from changing schools, covering all the initial and moving costs. My relationship with his parents remains strong, due in part to my daughter being particularly close to her grandmother, and we frequently visit each other even after the divorce. When we visit, they occasionally update me on my ex-husband's current situation. And to summarize what they've told me, the woman he cheated with was a colleague, and once their affair was discovered, both had to resign. Actually, they struggled to find full-time employment, surviving on part-time and temporary jobs. But seemingly, that woman reached her limit living that way and eventually vanished from his life. It's indeed poetic justice. As for me, I want to learn programming. Really? Yeah, since Dad didn't teach me. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. I may not fully understand, but I do. So I want to try hard to help you in place of Dad. My eldest son was getting married, and both families decided to have a meet and greet at an upscale sushi restaurant. However, on the day, for some reason, all that was placed in front of me was pickled ginger. When I stepped out of the room and asked the restaurant landlady, I got a shocking reply. I got a call saying the short-haired lady would be leaving soon. She said, she's fine with just the ginger. You probably can't afford your share anyway, right? It's just enough for poor folks like you. Angela, who had somehow sneaked up behind me, mocked me. In response to my silence, Angela flaunted her superiority. It's so sad you were born in a single-parent household. I'll play nice with your mom until the wedding, but after that, keep her away from our family. I don't want her poverty rubbing off on us. Answers the prayerly. Though we couldn't lead a luxurious life, my son and I have been living through the best. But to the best of our ability, there's no reason for anyone to mock us. I won't even wait till the wedding. I'll sever ties with her right now. I'm Elma, a 53-year-old housewife. I met my husband during college while working part-time, and after graduation we got married. However, just over a year after we both started working, my husband was diagnosed with throat cancer. After a hard battle, he passed away. Shortly after, I found out I was pregnant. I couldn't lean on my family for support as they had disapproved of my marriage and had cut ties. So, I raised my son Tom all by myself, though my husband passed without knowing about Tom. I wanted Tom to know his father, so I shared memories through photos and videos. I loved your dad so much, that's why I was so happy when I had you. Ed might be up in heaven, wishing he could play with us, seeing how close we are. Yeah, maybe. By the time he entered middle school, Tom expressed his desire to become a doctor. I saved as much as I could so Tom wouldn't have any difficulties. But medical school costs are astronomical. Mom, don't worry. I'll focus on getting scholarships for state universities. What about prep schools? And important. I won't go and study on my own. Are you serious? Despite my worries, Tom impressively advanced from a public high school to a state university. In a world where taking gap years or repeating a year is common, he graduated from medical school without any delays. Last year, he finished his 5-year residency. Congrats, Tom. Did you get the position at the renowned Salem hospital you hoped for? I was bursting with pride. The Salem hospital is so reputable that patients come from all around the city. We celebrated with some fine wine and pizza, and Tom smiled shyly. I'm just getting started. Now I can help save people who have the same disease as Dad. I was deeply moved, realizing that this had been his motivation all along. Afterward, Tom and I mainly communicated through texts a year after he started working. He started working at the hospital. Tom unexpectedly called Mom. There's someone I want to introduce to you. Can I bring her home? When's a good time? It dawned on me that my once little boy was now grown up. The day was set to introduce his fiancée, and I eagerly awaited it, unaware of the betrayal that would follow. She asked, "Is this a second home or something?" The moment she entered my 2-bedroom apartment, Angela made a snarky comment. Tom used to live here with me until recently. Wow, people can live in such tight spaces, she remarked as she noisily inspected my home. I replied with a hint of sarcasm, "Your place must be much bigger and nicer."
Yes, we have a 5-bedroom with an elevator, Angela said.
Her place was amazing, Mom. She's the niece of the head of Salem Hospital. Her dad works in pediatrics, and many in her family are doctors. Oh, is that so? I asked, taken aback. Dressed in high-end designer suits, Angela looked as stylish as a model, a modern beauty. The pink diamond engagement ring that Tom picked out for her fit perfectly on her slender finger. Her hair and skin looked expensive. Just little did I know she's related to the head of the hospital. I wondered why such an heiress would want to get engaged to a common man. Tom is smart and a good guy, but he hardly seems like a match for such a high-class lady. I've learned a lot from Angela as a senior doctor in the same department. I said,
Oh, really?
"My son speaks highly of her." I added, No. Tam's talented and handsome. He's popular among the patients and the nurses. I had to do trails the patients. I had to snatch him up before someone else did. I chuckled awkwardly, trying to keep the conversation going. Not the most refined lady, I thought, while munching on the homemade cake I made. Angela bragged nonstop. She went on about how renowned the Salem Hospital is and how prestigious the Salem family name is. And before she left, she informed me about the date for the families to meet. Are you free early next month?
On Sunday?
I've already booked a fancy sushi place, she added. I'll have to reschedule my lunch plans with a friend that day, I replied. It'd be a hassle to change now. Oh, to prove to take a day off? Sorry about that. I tried to hide my irritation.
It's all right.
I'll work something out. Really? That's great. Thanks. As I waved them off from the entrance, I reminisced about Tom's college dates. Poor guy. He never had luck with women. At evening, Tom called to apologize. Sorry, Mom, Angela didn't mean any harm. At 33, saying sad things without malice. Maybe she just has a bad attitude. I held back from giving him a piece of my mind. She must seem that way, but she's good with kids and really sweet. It's all right. I'm looking forward to meeting her parents. I decided to give it some time. Since the meeting with Angela's parents got scheduled suddenly, I decided to reschedule my plans with my friend. I took a half day off and met her on a weekday afternoon. While we nibbled on omelets and a calf, I lowered my voice. Sorry, Julia. You must be tired after work, right? It's fine. Your situation is more pressing. Thanks. But being related to a hospital sounds like it's going to be a lot of work. Sounds like she's quite a headstrong type. I'm taking my daughter to visit a friend in the hospital later. Wanna come? I quickly agreed. I've happened to see Angela. It'd be a chance to observe her at work. Her daughter had recently been diagnosed with meningitis and was hospitalized in the pediatric ward. Though her daughter got discharged, a friend she met in the next bed was still hospitalized. After picking up Julia's daughter from school, we headed to the hospital. The three of us got off at the floor where the pediatric department is located. The scent of disinfectant was strong. That's a mother holding the hand of a child in pajamas with an IV and a nurse bending down to speak to a small child were very noticeable. Etchin, as we made our way to the intended hospital room, a loud crying voice and a woman's yelling could be heard from the end of the corridor. That voice is Angela's. We all rushed with alarmed faces toward the room. Everyone else entered, but I passed by the room and hid behind a silver curtain outside the next room to eavesdrop.
The doctor said, because I'm so smart, I have to stay in the hospital forever.
That's awful. Why would she say something like that? Don't worry. If tomorrow's surgery goes well, you can go home. Julia responded defiantly and Angela shot back sharply. She's totally crying about being scared of tomorrow's surgery, so I scolded her. She's only in first grade. Of course, she'd be scared. This is why I don't like cats. I even brought the paperwork to the nurse's station for her. Make sure you tell her mother to discipline her properly. After yelling at Julia, Angela hugged Olivia and left the room with long strides. Feeling the need for some air, I decided to head up to the rooftop. The sight of fluttering laundry against the blue sky was dazzling. Consistent leaning against the railing, taking in the lush green mountains, I felt a bit more relaxed.
Sorry, the gift shop was busy. It took me longer than I thought. Oh, you came? Sorry, the gift shop was busy. It took me longer than I thought. Oh, you came?
Then I overheard a conversation between a young woman and an older man.
Carmen, don't you want more information about your daughter's condition? It's going to cost a lot for the surgery. So I'm offering to help. All I ask is for a little fun in return.
No matter how much it's for my daughter, I can't betray my husband. Anyway, I can't betray my husband.
Anyway, I returned. Turning around, I saw the young woman push away the hand of the man in a white coat and run down the stairs. It seemed like she was the patient's mother and he was her attending physician.
The doctor, looking troubled and scratching his head, suddenly turned to look at me. Far from being embarrassed, he smiled warmly. He smiled warmly and approached.
Even though I felt it would be rude to leave, since I had seen something I shouldn't have, I stayed put.
The doctor, with streaks of gray in his hair, was tall and handsome. Is your child hospitalized here too?
At her failure, I had taken it to read to Julia's daughter Ariel while she went to the restroom. As I was about to reply, I caught a glimpse of his name tag and widened my eyes. It read Salon. Could he be Angela's father or uncle or some other relative? Lost in thought, the doctor handed me an envelope. If you ever need advice about your child's illness, contact the number in there. I'm always here to help. He gave me a bright smile and left. Although troubled by the events at Salem Hospital, after contemplating whether to tell Tom, I decided to keep it to myself. Soon, the day of the family meeting approached, and I braced myself for it. Arriving 5 minutes early at the agreed-upon meeting spot, the local train station, I found Angela, Tom, and a kind-looking woman waiting. Apologizing for my slight tardiness, I followed Angela and Tom to our destination. We entered a fancy sushi restaurant and were led to a private room by the hostess. The room was beautifully decorated, perfect for such an auspicious occasion, with a decorative scroll, amber-colored chairs, and deep blue cushions. Angela turned to me with an apologetic expression.
My dad was called in for emergency surgery, so he'll be a bit late. I'm so sorry, especially at a time like this. We were hoping to have him introduce our family first. Maybe we should start with a meal?
When Angela's mom explained the situation to the round lady, she looked at me with a puzzled expression. After a while, I was speechless looking at the trays brought into the room. They were for Angela's mom, Angela and Tom. For some reason, there were only 3 savings of the full-course meal. Only pickle placed in front of me looked rather pitiful. Angela's mom tilted her head in a graceful manner. It's odd. Angela, didn't you reserve meals for 5? Yes, I did. I checked at the counter. Please start eating. I left the room and went to the counter to ask the landlady. Excuse me, I'm selling food for the pine course. Is my meal coming out later? The landlady replied apologetically. We received a call that the lady we showed here will be leaving soon. She said she only wants a pickle. What? At the moment, I heard snickering behind me. When I turned around, Angela was standing there with a slight grin. She moved toward the restroom corridor, so I followed her. What a big idea. Well, the dinner costs $26. You can't afford that. She smirks, insinuating she did me a favor, so I only get a pickle. Exactly, that's enough for someone as broke as you. You reek of poverty. I was fuming. Even though I wasn't wearing high-end brands like Angela and her mother, I had dressed up nicely and had my hair down. Seeing my silence, Angela said in a condescending tone, "It's so sad Tom was born in a single-parent home. I'll be nice to you till the wedding, but after that, stay away from our family. We don't want to cut your poverty." Got it. We might not have lived a luxurious life, but my son and I have worked hard. We don't deserve such disrespect. I severed ties with you before the wedding. Once outside the establishment, I made a call. When I returned and opened the room's sliding door, everyone looked shocked. Mom, I thought you left because you weren't feeling well. I smiled at Angela. Angela seemed to wish I'd left, but I never said a word about leaving. Angela glared at me with fierce eyes, but noticing her mother and Tom's gazes, she quickly put on a fake smile. I told you that. I told you that you look so pale and might not want to eat sushi. If you're not feeling well, tell me we can just go on without you. If there were more family, it would be different, but for a single parent, you'd want to push yourself to be there. Angela will understand when you become a parent. Angela's mother rebuked her with a serious expression, and Angela looked displaced. Angela's mom looked at me with concern. However, Tom's mom said, "And overdo it. If it suits you, we can reschedule. We'll adjust to your convenience. Thank you for your consideration. As you can see, I'm perfectly fine. Let's proceed as planned." I smiled at Angela's mother, and she seemed to relax. Unlike her daughter, she appeared to be a person of sound judgments. She had a kind, Buddha-like aura, very different from the striking. She's a beautiful Angela. Angela discreetly clicked her tongue, thinking her mother wouldn't notice. She probably put on an act in front of not only Tom but also her mother. "Oh, before I forget, let me give this to you." I took an envelope from my bag, which I had brought just in case, and handed it to Angela's mother. Hesitantly accepting it, Angela's mom checked the contents and her eyes went wide. "Oh, what is this?" Perhaps anyone would react this way if they were handed $3,000 in cash during a family get-together. It's Hirsch money, apparently. They also gave me their contact info, but I don't need it, so I'm giving it back.
Did you know my father?
I met him at the hospital the other day. He's quite a gentleman.
Oh, thank you so much. This is a big help.
You must be an important person.
No, not really.
If you're not, then why did my dad give you this money?
He asked me to give it to you.
But why? We don't even know you.
I don't know, maybe he trusts me.
Sorry, I'm late.
Oh, it's you.
Hans?
The hands began to tremble, and Angela's mom looked on in surprise. He blurted out and quickly covered his mouth, but it was too late. Hans pulled at my sleeve and whispered into my ear, "Don't call me on the phone like it says on the call, just text me on the personal cell." What are you whispering about? Angela's mom's demeanor suddenly turned stern. Oh, nothing really, just one thing to clarify. You were late today because you were called into surgery, right? Unable to meet her piercing gaze, Hans looked away. Well, of course. Then I verified with the hospital. As Angela's mom reached for her phone, Hans started to panic. Sorry, the truth is I was out with a woman.
Dad, you're the worst?
Angela yelled, while Hans folded his hands in apology.
Yet Angela's mom looked even colder and showed Hans the envelope I had given her. So curious to explain this.
Just take it.
$3,000 is a lot for average folks, right? We don't need your petty cash, especially not when it's returned hastily. Chuckling, Angela burst out laughing, pretending to be so tough despite being a poor single mom. Peter helped Eastring realizing her mistake, she glanced nervously at Tom. But when their eyes met, she hung her head in shame. What's this harsh money for? Well, that is, as Hans tried to intervene, I cut him off. Your husband was having a date with a patient on the rooftop. Us or not quite, he offered. He offered money saying, back then, because he saw me with a children's book. He mistook me for having a young child, but still, isn't it despicable? able to use your medical authority to force a romantic relationship. Seriously, Dad? Don't embarrass me. Angela rebuked him in a stern voice, and I half-jokingly said, "Oh, does Angela even have the right to scold her father?" Startled, Angela looked up and I greeted her with a gentle smile. Veteran from the book, pictures of Angela were spread across the table in Angela's mother hands, and Tom peered at them with keen interest. Angela quickly gathered them up, dropping them onto her lap, but the three caught every glimpse. Angela's face tightened and she let out a strained voice. "I hate you," peeking and displaying these weird composite photos. "Us always broke, but you have so much free time, huh?" I had heard the rumors, but I wanted to believe in Angela, so I tried not to listen. Angela's mother sighed at Tom's quiet words. Betraying such a good man. Looking forward, Tom's going to make a lot of money in the future. It's beneficial for me to marry him. But there is stiff competition, so I have to keep other options until it's settled. I can't be damned, but just in case. The pictures I laid out on the table captured Angela with nurses and doctors from the same hospital as they entered hotels and showed them being affectionate in public. After my first meeting with Angela, I had hired a private investigator. However, there was also an option to dispose of them discreetly without showing them to Tom. It was her recent attitude towards me that was the last straw. After your engagement with Tom, you hurriedly added things with others, but I heard you're still in disputes with a few of them. Just how many were you seeing at once? Angela seemed too defeated to argue, biting her lip in frustration. And of all of them, Tom was probably the best, even in his work. But sorry, I'm not allowed to acknowledge you for my son. That's with that. I pressed the play button on my mobile app. Oh, so annoying. Spoiled kids like you should go back to your family, or you have to live in the hospital forever. Angela's shout echoed in the elegant private room. He hands Angela's mother, and Tom turned pale, staring at Angela. Angela clutched her head, looking like she was about to scream. Making such a fuss over a minor surgery. How embarrassing. I feel sorry for the mother who has a child like you. If you can't behave, you'll be disliked by doctors, nurses, and even your family. Are you okay with that? I don't want that, but I'm scared of the surgery. This is why I had kids. While I was at the nursing station, I delivered some papers. Ish make sure to tell her mother to discipline her better when the playback finished.
How could you be so cruel to a little child?
Well, I don't like kids.
I had to say that, or you wouldn't marry me. Funded at Tom's accusation.
Honestly, they're smelly and noisy. I hate them.
That's a failing as a doctor.
Even in N, you see many young children. You might not like them, but you shouldn't show it. Kids are adorable after all. I don't want a lecture from you. Put your mouth when speaking to your father. A man who uses a patient to get to the mother. I don't want to call a father.
Give back the engagement ring. Ring? If it's at your place, I'd like it sent back to me.
I sold it. I used it as some extra cash.
Of course, it was the pink diamond engagement ring he had painstakingly saved up for. He'd been so happy talking about how he and Angela chose it at the jewelry store. Stood up, his fist shaking, but soon he clenched his lips and turned his back on us. "Sorry, I need to leave." At those few words, Tom left the room. Angela's mother, who nodded to Tom, stepped forward in front of me and bowed deeply, touching her forehead to the floor. Such a graceful gesture, reminiscent of someone raised in high society. I deeply apologize for any discomfort my family may have caused you. Oh no, would it be alright if you conclude our meeting for today? Yes, I suppose so. As I was about to take out my wallet, Angela's mother gestured for me to stop. "Please allow me." "Well, if you insist." Then she shot a cold glare at Hans, who looked like he had just swallowed a bitter pill. "You're marrying into this family and behaving so recklessly." Hans, looking chagrined, tried to laugh it off, but Angela's mother continued. "We'll see about that. Even if my brother forgives you, I won't. It's one thing with the nurses, but to lay a hand on a patient's parents, that's just not done in the medical world." "No, wait. Forgive me. It was just a momentary lapse," said Hans. Angela's mother then turned her stern gaze to Angela, who was sulking. Angela, if you don't have the passion, then don't pursue being a doctor. You're causing inconvenience to the patients." Everyone, including my uncles and dad, told me to become a doctor because I'm smart. It's not Angela's fault. At this point, I couldn't do any other job. I left the sushi restaurant, glancing sideways at the sullen Angela and the embarrassed Hans. Angela's mother immediately began investigating the issue of Hans pressuring a patient's mother for a relationship. It turned out he had approached over 10 people. She informed the hospital's director, her brother. A meeting was held the next day. Hans, leveraging his position as the director's brother-in-law, faced furious criticism from the doctors. The director, in particular, was furious that Hans had tarnished the reputation of Salem Hospital. Although the patient's parents didn't want an arrest, a settlement was reached, and Hans had to pay compensation. He was fired from the hospital. Additionally, Angela, who had previously shouted at a child, was reported by nurses for being excessively harsh without patience. She received a stern warning from the director. Still, due to disputes with doctors and nurses she was involved with, Angela felt uncomfortable at the hospital and resigned. After reading Heidi's divorce papers and a disowned maid's letter by their mother, Hans and Angela decided to save on living expenses and started sharing a cheap one-bedroom apartment. However, Hans, not having learned his lesson, kept bringing women home. Angela, despite having spent all her savings on a breakup settlement, showed no signs of being financially responsible. But while juggling multiple same jobs and barely making ends meet, the two constantly argued. Tom, heartbroken after breaking off the engagement with Angela, mentioned, "I'm done with relationships for a while." His focus is now on his medical studies, planning to think about marriage once he's grown more as a person. I'm relieved that Tom discovered Angela's true nature before marriage. Despite the challenges of being raised by a single mother, Tom has always worked twice as hard as everyone else. I'm sure when he meets someone who loves children and takes pride in her work, they'll build a beautiful family together. until then, as his mother, I want to support and watch over him with warmth and love. Look, it's Dad. I was shocked to see him. My daughter was pointing at my husband, who was with an unknown woman. They were holding hands and having a loving conversation. Blinded by rage, I approached them and said, "Looks like a fun business trip you're on." And when he turned around, "My name is Eileen Smith. I'm a 34-year-old stay-at-home mom. Well, I'm turning 35 next month, entering what they call the over-the-hill stage. I'll wonder when I stopped being excited about birthdays. I just don't want to get any older in this monotonous everyday life. I felt that way lately. My husband Hans is the same age as me, turning 35 this year. We met at a food manufacturing company 7 years ago and got married 5 years back. Huskin, our daughter Lily, who was in my womb at the time, is now 5 years old. Time seems to fly since she was born. Perhaps due to my routine of household chores and child care, I actually wanted to continue working, but I resigned when I got married and never returned to the workplace. The job involved a lot of traveling, and I thought it would be impossible to manage with childcare. Hans seemed to share this thought and suggested I quit, but I think he wanted me to support his career more than help with childcare. After all, he never involves himself in household or childcare tasks. He didn't help me when I suffered from morning sickness during pregnancy, never fed Lily or changed her diapers. He hasn't picked Lily up from kindergarten even once. Given this situation, resigning was the right choice. So I spent my days handling household chores and child care alone. One day, after putting Lily to bed as usual, my husband came home from overtime. "Welcome home," I said. "I'll reheat dinner," I added. On hearing my response, he frowned. "Ill fish, but in the mood. Anything else?" "Well, I have some leftover burger from yesterday in the freezer." "No, can't have burgers 2 days in a row," I said, getting irritated. "Then what will you have?" he asked. "I'll have instant noodles," he responded in a sour tone. "What instant noodles?" I said. "If you're going to eat that, might as well eat what I cooked." Then he raised his voice. "Oops, I'm tired. Stop nagging." "Who's the one nagging?" I shouted. And at that moment, the living room door opened. "Mommy, I'm thirsty." "Oh, Lily, I'm sorry. Did we wake you up?" Our voices must have reached her through the wall separating the living room and the bedroom in our cramped apartment. I apologized to Lily and went to prepare some water for her. When I returned to the living room, a cup of instant noodles with leftover soup and plastic fork were on the table. But my husband was gone. It seems he went to the bathroom. I sighed and threw them into the trash. This isn't a restaurant where you can get what you want instantly. No, even in a restaurant, if you order Indian curry in a Mexican restaurant, it probably won't be served. I wonder, is every husband like this? And how do all the housewives out there decide what to make for dinner? I wish someone could tell me. I thought this as I wiped down the table. Nevertheless, I understand well that my husband's job is tough, being experienced myself. When I was still working, I used to get irritable from being too busy too. If someone like me, who's been there, doesn't understand him, Who else can empathize with his struggles? Probably no one. Eventually, I concluded that and decided to be mindful, not to argue over such small things. But to refresh from work, I planned a vacation. Can you get time off for a vacation? Yeah, as of now, great. How about we go on a trip to blow off some steam? A trip? Sounds good. My husband was open to the idea of going on a trip, and my daughter, on hearing this news, was more overjoyed than I imagined. Yay! Where are we going? Since I mentioned the word vacation, it became the talk of the town every day. But to make the trip enjoyable for my daughter and husband, I busily prepared booking hotels and researching tourist spots. Since the preparations were last minute, it was tough finding available hotels, but I managed to find one. 2 days before departure, I showed the hotel on my smartphone to my daughter and husband and said, "I've booked this hotel." Wow, the room is so big. Since it was last minute, only the suite was available. Well, it's a treat once in a while, isn't it? Dad, I'm so excited. Yeah, me too. My husband replied to us somewhat lethargically. It would be terrible if he fell ill before the trip. You think so? I said. It's getting late. Let's go to bed, and took my daughter to the bedroom. We were looking forward to the trip in 2 days, but it seemed my husband didn't share our feelings. I realized this on the eve of departure. Atensi superiores to niños. The day before departure, he said, "I can't go on the trip. I have a sudden business trip for 3 days from tomorrow." Sorry, what do you mean? A business trip during our vacation? There was a delivery mistake in the product. I have to deal with it urgently. Can't someone else handle it? It's my responsibility. It's more important than our family trip. It's my job. I have no choice. Didn't you promise Lily yesterday? She was looking forward to it so much. Stop nagging. Some things are just impossible. He left those words and disappeared into the bedroom. It was very disappointing, more than anything. Tomorrow, thinking of my daughter's feelings made my heart tighten. The next day, after my husband left, I explained the situation to my daughter, who woke up. "I'm sorry, honey. Daddy has to work. We can't go on the trip." After she heard this, she looked down for a while with teary eyes. She must have been very sad. Eventually, she started crying loudly. "I'm sorry. Instead, let's go out somewhere, just the two of us." Then my daughter, with her face messed up with tears and runny nose, earnestly answered, "Amusement park." "Let's go to the amusement park." "Amusement park, huh? That's a good idea. There's an amusement park quite close to our house where both children and adults can enjoy. That would probably create good memories for my daughter." I agreed and quickly got ready to go to the amusement park. This is so fun! My daughter had completely cheered up and was enjoying herself. As the sun began to set, she had become utterly exhausted. "Yeah, let's start heading back. Then, I want to go on that last. The Ferris wheel?" "Let's go." So I took my daughter's hand and we joined the line. The Ferris wheel was beautifully lit up against the twilight sky. How beautiful. While I was captivated by the view, my daughter tugged my hand. "Look! It's Dad!" I looked in the direction my daughter was pointing and saw a couple holding hands a few meters ahead of us in line. "Sis, you must be mistaken," I tried to say, attempting to look back at the Ferris wheel. At that moment, the queue moved and we ended up facing the couple directly. Then I was flabbergasted by the face that revealed itself. It was unmistakably my husband. "It is Dad." My daughter raised her voice, but my husband didn't seem to notice us. Instead, he was intimately conversing with the woman he was with. Was the business trip a lie? Did he plan to enjoy a vacation with this woman for 3 days? Does that mean he chose a trip with this woman over his own family? Everything was settled 2 days before the trip. Maybe on that day, he was not feeling unwell but just replying absently, having no intention to go on a trip with us. I tried hard to sort out the situation I found myself in. Just while I was thinking, the queue moved remorselessly, and by either good or bad luck, we ended up right beside them. My husband was talking joyfully to the woman, his back towards us. Unable to restrain myself, I spoke to his back. "Enjoying your business trip?" Responding to my voice, he turned around, his eyes and mouth wide open in shock. "Dad?" My daughter called him and the woman next to him, seeming to understand. Seemingly understanding the situation, he finally let go of her hand. She managed to speak. "It's not what it looks like. This is checking the Ferris wheel. I caught you in the act. Why would a sales department be checking, especially in a food company?" she asked, finding the absurdity amusing. "Laylee, let's go." She didn't care about him anymore and tried to leave, but her daughter asked, "Aren't we playing with Dad?" It seemed like he cared more about that woman than about them. When she replied so, her daughter frowned. "I never said that." She tried to defend her husband, but it was too late.
"It's the worst. He never plays with me. I hate him," she said and ran away.
Surprised, her husband seemed to react to those words but just stood there bewildered.
Agreeing her husband and the sweating one beside him, she ran after her daughter.
"I'm sorry we couldn't go on the Ferris wheel."
"Instead, shall we buy popcorn from over there and go home?"
"I hate Dad. I don't want fairground popcorn or Dad."
"Is that so?" She asked, trying to hide her sadness.
"Yes, because Mom's sad because of Dad."
Lily ill, she heard her daughter's words and decided to divorce her husband. She couldn't forgive him for making their young daughter say such things. You see, on the way back, she stopped by her parents' nearby home and left her daughter with them after explaining the situation. Then she returned home alone and searched through her husband's room. And from his computer, she found records of messages between him and his mistress. The conversations revealed that their affair was long and intimate. As she mindlessly read the messages, any feelings she had for her husband were completely gone. Meanwhile, his calls and messages were incessantly ringing, but she blocked all his contact. Briefly, while she was packing her stuff, whether out of remorse or realization that his lies were exposed, her husband returned home that day. It was late, almost like he spent the evening contemplating excuses with his mistress over dinner. She couldn't tell whether he was remorseful. About earlier, her husband started to speak the moment he noticed her, but she didn't want to hear any excuses and interrupted him by reading aloud. His fervent exchanges with his mistress, well, transfixed, staring at the computer screen, looking forward to the trip from tomorrow. I value the trip with you more than my family, she said, showing him the evidence of his infidelity. Stop it, he hastily snatched the computer from her, yelling, "What are you snooping around for? It's creepy." This caused her to lose her temper. "Excuse me? Peeking around with a young woman is what's creepy," she asked, confronting him. "What did you come back for? To blame me when you're clearly at fault," she continued, not giving him a chance to explain. "Maybe you returned late because you were busy concocting excuses with your mistress. Do you have any intention to apologize?" But when I confronted him, he lowered his shoulders and said, "I don't need your apologies now. I want a divorce. No, anything but that. I'll apologize. I'll do anything. Do anything. Do you think you can fix this by doing something?" Ridiculous. I left the house with my bags after saying this. Later, I formally divorced him. I demanded $35,000 in damages from my ex-husband and his mistress, and also claimed child support until my daughter became an adult. She broke up with him furiously when I demanded the compensation and even went to his boss to get him demoted before resigning. Because of this, the company discovered the affair and he was demoted and had his salary cut. My ex-husband, who can't even iron his shirts, let himself go, began oversleeping, became habitually late, becoming a burden to his reputable company. Picked with paroease, I snorted when I heard this from my in-laws, thinking he should be thankful he wasn't fired. The Peri-in-laws were also disgusted by my ex-husband's actions and have declared they won't help him, leaving them estranged. I, on the other hand, took refuge at my parents' with my daughter and started a full-time job. My supportive parents and my resilient daughter growing up, even with less time with me, filled me with gratitude. "Oh, welcome back." One day when I came back from work, my daughter greeted me joyfully. "I'm back, Lily." But while seeing this and looking at her closely, she seemed to be fidgeting with something on her back. "Mom, what is it, Lily? What's happening? Happy birthday. This is a present from me." "Oh, my Terk." I had completely forgotten that today was my birthday, being so engrossed in work. In her little hand was a rolled-up piece of paper. Opening it, I was overwhelmed with tears. "It's a portrait of you, Mom. Isn't it cute?" "Lily, thank you. Thank you. Getting older isn't so bad. Rather, as I age, its significance seems to deepen. I feel this way, undoubtedly, thanks to my daughter in my arms." I hugged my daughter once more, smiling warmly,